Welcome to I Hate It Here, the podcast for HR and people professionals, making the hardest job in the world just a little bit easier. I'm Hibba Youssef. Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited about this episode because I'm doing something a bit different. I've had some of HR's most influential leaders on the show, and over the last season, they've had so many incredible bits of HR wisdom that I really wanted to highlight some of the advice in one place. So today, we're taking a walk down memory lane to relive some of the hottest, juiciest takes from this season. Buckle up. The first guest might be the queen of controversy on Reddit and featured on LinkedIn lunatics regularly, but I find her absolutely phenomenal. As the author of The Hidden Gem Within, Jessica Winder is one of the most honest voices in HR I know. And I have to admit, her sound bites are absolute gold. If you were on an HR team that was constantly hearing lack of growth opportunities was the reason why employees were quitting, what would you do?
This has happened to me. I have lived this experience. And the first thing that I always say in this situation is, where's the data? Is it the exit interviews? Is it employee engagement? Where is this coming from? And I need it in writing because, as we know, going and saying like, I'm hearing or I feel, these are trigger words for people to disrespect HR. So don't let that happen to you. You need facts, you need data, you need the people analytics. And so anytime someone's saying, I don't feel like I'm able to grow, has anyone been promoted? And if so, what are their demographics? Why are certain people getting growth opportunities or stretch assignments? Do other people even know about these opportunities? So where's the data? That's what, start there.
What are some other things that people can do to foster like this environment for growth? I love this individual success plan, but like anything else you've used that has like really helped foster an environment for growth so people don't quit, and use growth as the example.
Letting people know about opportunities. So just how we should have transparency when it comes to compensation, we should have transparency when it comes to opportunities. Why are certain people told about growth opportunities and other people are not? Because they haven't been identified as high performing, but what does that actually mean? So making sure that opportunities are open to everyone. So if you're going to have a stretch assignment, why is it just this one person that was told about it? Other people might have been well suited to take the role or to do the stretch assignment, but they were never even told. So opportunity transparency is also very important because that creates a feeling of trust that you're going to tell me when opportunities arise versus, oh, this person has just got a stretch assignment for no reason other than their manager likes them.
Who hasn't been stuck in a bad job before? I know I have. Being stuck in a career can take you to some pretty dark places. There's hopelessness, anger, bitterness, and all of the 5 stages of career grief in between. The next guest has spent her career helping others to recognize their career stalemates and turn them into personal growth. Here's some top-notch advice from Tori Lazar.
What we're doing right now is we're all waking the fuck up and we're asking, why?
Yeah.
Why are we doing the things that we're doing? Why are the systems the way that they are? What is the motivation and the rationale and the reasoning behind everything? That's what's happening. And there's actually this really amazing quote I love by a woman. Her name is Zora Neale Hurston. She's an author, anthropologist, and filmmaker.
I read a lot.
But there's this great quote, and I actually keep this as a Post-it note in my digital workspace, but there are years that ask questions and there are years that answer. And I think right now we're in the years that ask questions. And this is a cycle that society will always go through. I feel like today there's this feeling of not wanting to deal with hard things just across the board, right? If people have a different viewpoint than you, we'd rather exist in our echo chamber on social media than have a conversation with that person or try to understand and empathize and find a way forward where we both can coexist, right? We're in this space and time where we want to avoid challenge. And I always say to people, because oftentimes when people come to me and they're like, I'm stuck, it's so challenging. But it's the thing is, no matter which path you go down, even if you pivot, it will be challenging. Suffering is an inevitable fact of life. And that's a hard truth to hear. And it's one I feel like I've accepted in the past year or two, but it's like no matter what you do, there's going to be challenges. You will be frustrated. And it's really just about figuring out which challenges are worth figuring out and moving through, and which challenges are right for you, which challenges fuel you and drive you and propel you to move forward. So oftentimes that comes up a lot when people want to pivot their careers. It's like a question of challenge, and I'm like, both will be challenging. So it's like, which one is worth fighting for? We've all been taught that money and status are of the utmost importance, and that being liked is of the utmost importance, even if it compromises how we feel, what we need, and what we believe in. And so we have been going through life, and I did this at the very beginning of my career as well. We go through life just conforming and fitting into various boxes. So for me personally, in high school and throughout my childhood, again, I was a competitive dancer. I was girly. I didn't play sports. I liked clothes. And so everybody was like, oh, the fashion girl. So I went to college for fashion. I basically just mirrored what people saw me as. That was it. It was just a mirror. It was a reflection. It had nothing to do with the fact that, well, yeah, I am creative, but creativity can be applied in so many different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I now use my creativity to problem solve and to navigate challenges.
You know, when I complain about the past CEOs I've worked with who have made working in HR a living nightmare? Well, thankfully, my next guest isn't one of them. As the CEO of Workweek, my current boss, Adam Ryan, opens up about the complex relationship between CEOs and CPOs.
There's something about a personality of a CPO across the board that what makes them great is that they have a pulse, and like they feel things, and they love to like they like see the thing that no one else sees because they always are looking and they're always having the pulse. But then the flip side of that is like they love having the pulse. It's like their skill set. And I think then the hard line is like, hey, I don't want to give up this thing because like I have the pulse of that then, but I'm actually like fundamentally at this stage not good at this anymore. And I think that honesty is how you can like resolve that tension. And I think it's like a real thing. It's like when does like HR actually no longer like have the pulse of the company? And it's probably when they stop doing everything. And I think you could flip the same thing and say it to CEOs of like, hey, cool, you were great at this thing. Like you were the salesperson and now you're not. So get over it. But that transition is really difficult, and it kind of goes against the grain of a lot of people's skill sets. And then there's like also potentially ego involved in all that. And I think just like consistent communication of like, hey, this is tough. I don't want to like lose sight of this because it makes my job better. But doing this thing is not good either. When you and I have tensions with departures, is you tend to be very like default to transparency with the team of like, this is like, hey, this is what happened. This is what it is. And it's our value. Default to transparency is like one of our values. And I like am on board with that. But like when it clashes and we have tensions is when I feel like it goes against a narrative control that I want. And that is kind of an indicator, I think, of the perspective of our days of like, you think about how does our team feel with this happens? And I tend to think of like, what will our team think? And like, those are just different. And like, they both matter like a lot, but that's like, we've had some pretty heated back and forth. And I think the reality is like, there's really like a middle ground there where I realize sometimes, and we've like got this feedback from staff when we went with my way is like, hey, what the hell? I didn't know this thing. And then we've had conversations around suggestions you've had like, hey, that's going to probably like ruffle too many feathers. It's like too far that way. And like, you kind of have to butt heads in a way to like create that. And I think like the middle is the right way.
For these next few clips, I was lucky enough to have not one, but two HR thought leaders Stephen and Daniel Huerta have spoken to over 200 different people leaders about all of the unique challenges facing HR today, from calendar redesign to AI to finding the Goldilocks of spreadsheets. Here's some of the most valuable lessons the hosts of the Modern People Leader podcast learned from their experiences.
On the employee side, there's also this identity crisis around like what it means to be an employee. How does work play into my life? Like, how important should it be to me? Like, there's all of these questions that our employees are asking. So naturally, I'm sure HR is having similar thoughts themselves, but also thinking like, how does HR play into this change?
Well, and I'll add one layer to the cake, the change cake, and that is AI. I believe the way that work fundamentally gets done is changing. And like work as we know it, it's just going to look totally different. And I see it at these AI summits we're doing where it's largely HR leaders and where we do this like accelerated lean canvas to try to help identify opportunities for, incorporating AI into our HR programs. And one of the highlights is that HR leaders are still very, very limited in the range at which they can see how AI will change work. I think we get to a place of negative churn or like 110% retention when we provide opportunities for talent development organically. When we bring down the silos of the organization, when we find ways of getting managers to quit hoarding talent and they start to think with an open mind of like abundance, not scarcity. I don't know. I have these like crazy ideas. And so when I think about retention, like what really gets me fired up is like, what if we were able to achieve these things that we just didn't think were possible before because the way we were doing it was just like, we just been doing it the same old way we've always been doing it. And so that's when I get really excited about like where we're at and the place we're at. Like, are we close to getting to that outcome? No, I don't think so. But why don't we shoot for that?
Okay, so my next guest, Erica Spitale, came on the show to do one of my favorite segments ever with me, answer audience submitted questions. And honestly, Erica is such a badass. She has a master's in psychology, a doctorate in clinical psychology, and is a licensed clinical psychologist. Yeah, I don't know how she does it all. Let's check out what she had to say.
As a company, you do right by your employees by giving them as many opportunities as possible, being honest about what those opportunities are, even if it means opportunities outside of your company. Your responsibility is still growth and development, even if someone decides to opt out post growth and development. You have then done a successful job as a company, but to limit it and or to restrict it based on hierarchy is like a no-go, especially now, right? Like the hierarchy and the structure should not be dictating people's growth and development opportunities. I also say that to say you can get creative. Like if promotion is the only way that folks in your organization see growth, you've got some overhauling to do, right? If you truly don't believe that, right? How do you market? How do you rebrand your organization as a growth and development hub, but give folks different ideas and options as to what growth and development means? This work isn't exhausting. It's the environments in which we have to do the work in that make it exhausting. This work is exhilarating when you actually get to do it and do it without barriers, do it without constraints, do it without naysayers, do it without non-supporters, do it without incompetent leadership.
I love this job. And when I can do it in an environment that lets me do it well, and I can make life-changing impact on employees, I go home then feeling so good about myself because I wish somebody would have done it for me. That's really like what I wake up to do, why I do this job every day. Because I'm like, I have been hurt by bad HR teams. I have had a leader who didn't believe in me. I've had a manager who was biased and only wanted to promote men over me. I've dealt with all these situations where I've been told like, don't be so vocal, don't be so direct, you're too confident. And I just think like, I never want to create an environment where someone is getting that type of like ridiculous feedback. And I guess that's what keeps me going every day. Thanks for tuning in. Keep up with all the latest HR resources by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. And if you love I Hate It Here, tell an HR friend. I'll see you next time.